In this module, Module 1, we're going to discuss understanding transdisciplinarity, because transdisciplinarity really is the cornerstone of STEAM education. So it's important that you understand the difference between multidisciplinary, interdisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity. Transdisciplinary teaching, as you learned in the first course, really foregrounds a problem to be solved, and not the discipline. So what this means is that while math, science, ELA, and social studies are used to solve the problem, they are synthesized within the problem that's posed, and that the disciplines naturally emerge from the problem. This is really important because this helps to mimic what really happens in the real world. And if you think about if there is a problem to be solved in your local community, people begin with the problem and then look to experts who might be able to fill in that content knowledge. Additionally, students typically solve this problem collaboratively while working in teams. Now, while they may divide the tasks amongst themselves in the group, ultimately they come together to solve the problem collaboratively. Additionally, technology usually assists in solving this problem or is used to demonstrate learning, such as a final assessment or presentation. We'll talk about technology quite a bit in this class and in the last class on STEAM assessment. It's important to distinguish between disciplinary teaching, multidisciplinary teaching, interdisciplinary teaching, and transdisciplinary teaching. And so if we begin with disciplinary teaching, that's probably the one that you're most familiar with. This is, say if you're a math teacher, you're teaching the content of math. If you're a science teacher, you're teaching the content of science. If you're an English teacher, you're working with the standards of English. However, there's also other types of teaching. Multidisciplinary teaching is also pretty common. You may be teaching science and math, but you're not usually at a place where you're integrating the two. And so while you see in the circles here, they're not overlapping. There's one content area and another, but they don't overlap to solve a problem. Interdisciplinary teaching is also really common. You tend to see this more in higher level subject areas because it actually produces a new discipline. Interdisciplinary teaching, for example, maybe in biophysics or bioengineering, are examples of interdisciplinary teaching. That's actually a new discipline, but it still begins with the content in mind and merges those together. However, in STEAM teaching, we're really interested in transdisciplinary teaching, and this is quite different. Transdisciplinary teaching begins with the problem that you're going to solve and then looks to see what disciplines authentically integrate. What would you need to do to solve that problem? And so the goal is not ticking off all of the check boxes of science, engineering, math, English language arts, or social studies, but rather, what is this problem and what's the knowledge that we're really going to need to know in order to solve this problem? And so, as we had just said, transdisciplinary teaching foregrounds the problem to be solved and not the discipline. What is really important is that transdisciplinary thinking is seen as an important 21st century skill. What does this mean for your students? Is that students really are expected to think this way when they leave the formal K-12 setting, and they're able to solve problems collaboratively using technology and blending disciplines that make sense. I'm going to refer back to this STEAM conceptual model that we really looked deeply in the first course. And the reason is that when we think about the learning context of problem-solving skills and discipline integration, these are really important components of transdisciplinary thinking. So we're thinking about discipline integration across multiple content areas and really the ways in which those ideas are connected. In the previous course, we really teased apart the classroom environment of problem-based, authentic class, tasks, multiple methods, student choice and technology integration, and teacher facilitation. In this class, we are going to refer back to some of those, the problem-based and looking at technology integration and authentic tasks. And ultimately, we're doing all of this so our students become better problem solvers, that they develop those cognitive skills, the ability to work together, and become really creative learners. So one component of STEAM education is problem-based learning. And so this really is fueled by problem-based instruction. And so the only way to support students in problem-based learning is beginning with a problem in mind. We frame these in STEAM as STEAM problem scenarios. You've got some practice at developing those from the last class. And don't worry, we'll tweak those as you move towards thinking about implementing them in your own setting. Problem-based instruction really offers students relevant problems to solve. They can relate to the problems because students care about them. And if they have some background in it, perhaps the problem is local issue or involves something they have experience with, or they've seen it on the news. All of these are ways to tap into students' relevancy to make sure they're really engaged in the problem solve. Problem-based instruction often has a driving question or questions to help direct the problem. In this class, we'll practice writing those driving questions. Problem-based instruction is not the same thing as project-based instruction, but they're often related and unfortunately kind of confused between the two. But problem-based instruction always begins with a problem, and project-based instruction tends to focus on the process, and the end goal really is a specific product or project. Technology integration is key to problem-based instruction as it can really help to make the work collaborative. If we think about all of the wonderful Google tools that are available, such as Google Docs or Google Slides, where students can be working at their own computers or even in different spaces to work together. Technology integration helps us to become really efficient. We can work on the presentation together. We can also divide the tasks and work on different things at the same time. This also allows for teacher and peer feedback during the problem-solving process. We're going to model some of these in this class and give you a chance to try out some opportunities for peer feedback. Also, as a teacher, when students turn in things electronically, teachers often talk about this giving them an ability to really provide some directed feedback in ways that a more standardized assessment doesn't. And last, technology integration, particularly when we get into creative technology, really promotes innovation as we encourage students to create and make and play and tinker. Authentic problems are often appropriate for the development of student and relevant to their lives. One thing that we really focus on is figuring out what students are engaged in and how can we tap into those by creating STEAM problems that are relevant to their lives. The other component is that it gives them practice in developing those problem-solving skills, which is really important.